Let's get started with our first news. Islam Makhachev's longtime coach, Javier Mendez, has shared his very candid thoughts on Khamzat Chimaev's win over Dricus du Plessis at UFC 319. Speaking during an episode of the Javier and Mo show on YouTube, Coach Mendez didn't hold back. He strongly defended Chimaev's performance, and more importantly, the strategy he used to secure the victory. According to Mendez, the way Khamzat fought was exactly the way he himself would have instructed him to fight, and he insisted that anyone calling the fight boring was looking at it the wrong way. Mendez explained that in high-level mixed martial arts, strategy and execution matter far more than entertainment value. He said very clearly that, if he had been in Khamzat's corner that night, he would have told him to do the exact same thing. Take Dricus du Plessis down, control him, and don't give him the slightest chance to turn the fight into something risky. For Mendez, that was the smart approach. He pointed out that people often criticize grappling-heavy fights because they want wild exchanges on the feet, but the reality is that fighters at this level are chasing the biggest prize in the sport, the world title. When that opportunity is in front of you, you do whatever gives you the best chance to win. He broke it down in very simple terms. Why risk it? Why put yourself in unnecessary danger when you can play to your strengths? Mendez made it clear that Khamzat had absolutely no reason to abandon the safest and most effective path to victory. This, after all, was his chance to capture the UFC belt and potentially set himself up to become the biggest superstar in MMA. Mendez even compared Khamzat's potential to that of Khabib Nurmagomedov. He said that while Khabib became a global icon, Chimaev has the tools and personality to reach an even greater level of stardom if he stays disciplined and keeps winning. He emphasized that winning at this level is about minimizing risk, not about pleasing the crowd with unnecessary brawls. If du Plessis had been able to get back up after being taken down, sure, the fight might have looked more entertaining, but he wasn't able to, and that's the whole point. And Day said, if he gets back up, you take him down again. If he escapes, you repeat the process. You keep going until you secure the win. That, he stressed, is the mentality of champion. Addressing fans who complained about the fight being boring, Mendez flipped the blame entirely. He said, whose fault is it really? If a fighter can't stop the takedown and can't work his way back to his feet, then that's not on the grappler, that's on the opponent. It's up to the one being dominated to improve his defensive wrestling, his scrambles, his ability to get back up. The responsibility lies there, not on the fighter who simply does what he does best. Mendez made it clear that he never blames the one who dominates with his strengths. In his eyes, Khamzat's job was to win, and he executed perfectly. Finally, he reminded everyone that, if his memory was correct, du Plessis' own coach had once claimed they could handle Khamzat on the ground. Well, UFC 319 proved otherwise. The reality is simple. Khamzat imposed his game plan flawlessly, and that's why he left with the belt. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We're constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That's why we truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now moving on to another big story. Former UFC bantamweight champion Dominic Cruz has weighed in on the current state of mixed martial arts, and he believes we are entering a new cycle. According to Cruz, the grappler era is officially making a comeback in the UFC. He recently posted a video on his social media where he broke down Khamzat Chimaev's dominant win over Dricus du Plessis at UFC 319, using the performance to illustrate how MMA constantly shifts between different styles taking over. Cruz began by pointing out what stood out the most to him in Khamzat's fight. It wasn't simply that du Plessis got taken down. That happens to almost everyone eventually. What shocked him was that du Plessis had no tools to escape once he was on the mat. No scramble, no separation, no adjustment to create space. Cruz emphasized that this was more than just a takedown clinic. It was total domination, and it highlighted the elite level Khamzat operates at. He explained that if you're Khamzat, that is exactly how you want to fight. You take away your opponent's options, you smother them with pressure, and you don't even allow them to breathe. Cruz stressed that if Khamzat can hold someone down and drain them without absorbing damage, there is no reason to stand and trade shots. No smart fighter risks taking unnecessary damage when a clear path to victory already exists. Typically, Cruz noted, fighters at the highest level can create some kind of separation. Maybe they shrimp back to half guard, maybe they work a butterfly hook, or at least wall walk to get up. But in this case, Duplessis had no answers. He was trapped. He was smothered. He couldn't get Khamzat off him for even a moment. Cruz argued that this showed just how dominant Khamzat is on the ground. From there, Cruz shifted to the broader picture. He reminded fans that MMA has always evolved in waves. There was recently a striker-heavy era led by fighters like Israel Adesanya, where dynamic kickboxers controlled fights and were able to stuff takedowns. During that period, grapplers had trouble imposing their style, but Cruz now sees the pendulum swinging back in favor of wrestlers and grapplers. To back this up, he gave examples. Kamaru Usman recently controlled Buckley with relentless wrestling against the cage. Delete, another rising name, was completely shut down by what Cruz described as high school level wrestling mixed with black belt jiu-jitsu top pressure from Anthony Hernandez. And of course, Khamzat just dominated Dricus du Plessis with his relentless wrestling and suffocating control. For Cruz, these fights aren't isolated examples. They reveal a growing trend. In modern MMA, it's no longer about if you're taken down, it's about when. The question becomes, do you have the skills to get back up? Do you have the guard work, the transitions, the scrambling ability to survive? If not, the grappler will keep you grounded and the fight quickly becomes one-sided. Cruz ended by saying the sport has clearly swung back into the ERA of the grappler, with Khamzat Chimaev leading this charge, and others like Usman and Hernandez reinforcing the shift. Cruz believes this new wave of grappling dominance is only beginning. Let's move on to some absolutely breaking developments that have the MMA world buzzing. Khabib Nurmagomedov, the undefeated legend and one of the most respected voices in combat sports, may have just leaked massive news about UFC 32 at Madison Square Garden. According to several reports, Khabib casually let slip that Islam Makhachev, his protege, training partner, and current lightweight champion, will make his highly anticipated welterweight debut at MSG by challenging the newly crowned champion, Jack Della Maddalena. This revelation instantly sent shockwaves through the MMA community, and here's why. The UFC hasn't confirmed anything yet. There has been no press release, no official post, nothing from Dana White. But let's be honest, Khabib is not just anyone. When Khabib speaks, fans, fighters, and even media insiders pay close attention. According to multiple outlets, Khabib dropped this bombshell during a public appearance in New York. Eyewitnesses claim he said, "Islam is fighting at Madison Square Garden. Maddalena's team gave the green light." Those words were enough to set off a social media frenzy. Within minutes, MMA Twitter and Reddit threads were on fire. Fans started debating whether Khabib had revealed confidential information, whether this was a deliberate tease or simply a misunderstanding. Some argued that Khabib wouldn't say something this specific unless he knew it was already close to being finalized. Others suggested it might be classic fight promotion, a way to stir excitement before the official announcement. What makes this story even more interesting is the timing. As of now, the UFC's November calendar remains officially TBD. However, Madison Square Garden is already reserved for the Saturday after the New York Rangers road trip. The venue has historically been locked down months in advance for UFC events, and November cards at MSG are tradition, so the timing lines up perfectly with Khabib's claim. But let's not get carried away. There has been no official confirmation from Dana White, the UFC's digital team, or Islam Makhachev himself. In fact, Islam has been completely silent on social media about his next move, fueling even more speculation. Insiders are reminding fans to stay cautious. In MMA, verbal agreements, leaked conversations, and rumors mean very little until the contracts are signed. We've seen countless fights fall apart at the last minute. Still, the buzz around Islam moving up to welterweight has reached an all-time high. Fans have been calling for him to test himself in a second division, and Maddalena, as the newly crowned champion, presents the perfect opportunity. Stylistically, it's a fascinating matchup. Islam's world-class wrestling and suffocating top game against Maddalena's crisp boxing and knockout power. Whether this leak was intentional or accidental, one thing is certain: Khabib has ignited the hype train. If UFC 322 at Madison Square Garden really ends up featuring Islam Makhachev's welterweight debut for the title, we could be looking at one of the biggest cards of the year. Now moving on to Francis Ngannou, who is currently facing some serious backlash from fans online. The former UFC heavyweight champion has once again found himself in the middle of controversy, this time not for his performances inside the cage, but because of comments he made that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. What's making the situation even more intense is that fans are now circling back to Dana White's old remarks about Ngannou, remarks where Dana flat out said he had no interest in ever doing business with him, and even went as far as to call him a bad person. At the time, many thought Dana was simply being bitter because Ngannou walked away from the UFC to test free agency, but now, with these new comments from Francis surfacing, the tide seems to be shifting. Fans on social media have been quick to jump on the bandwagon, and they are not holding back in the slightest. One fan wrote, "Doesn't show up to work because he doesn't like the fights that night. Does he think he's Joe Rogan or Dana White? He's such an unlikable guy." That type of sentiment has been spreading rapidly. Another fan piled on saying, "Dana was right. There's something fishy about this guy. His tune has changed recently. Maybe Dana was right all along." And it didn't stop there. Yet another person tweeted, "Every time this dude says something, it just confirms Dana got it right." When you see that kind of reaction repeatedly popping up across different platforms, it paints a very clear picture. The fans are starting to sour on Ngannou. People are even beginning to poke fun at the PFL, the organization that signed Ngannou with what was reported to be a massive contract. Fans are joking about how bad of an investment it looks like now. One comment that stood out said, "Imagine Dana still trying to deal with this man. Low, I feel bad for PFL." What an investment. That type of sarcasm, while harsh, shows just how quickly public perception can turn against a fighter. Ngannou, once viewed as a symbol of fighter independence and someone who stood up to the UFC machine, is now being criticized for the very same qualities that once earned him praise. The narrative has flipped almost overnight. Instead of being admired for sticking to his guns, he's now being painted as difficult, selfish, and ungrateful. So right now, Ngannou's image has undeniably taken a major hit. The backlash is real, and it's only growing louder. Whether fair or not, fans are beginning to echo Dana White's words from the past. Words that once seemed like typical UFC boss trash talk, but now feel, at least to many fans, like they might have carried some truth all along. And the big question going forward is, how does Ngannou respond to this? Does he try to repair his image, or does he double down and continue being unapologetically himself? Either way, this controversy has reminded everyone of just how polarizing Francis Ngannou really is. Moving on, Kamaru Usman has recently spoken out, and he made it very clear that he gives full credit to Khamzat Chimaev. After their short-notice clash at UFC 2094, many fans began pushing the idea that the only reason Usman lost was because he didn't have a full training camp. Some suggested that if he had been fully prepared, the result would have been completely different. But on his own pound-for-pound podcast, Usman shut down that entire conversation. He dismissed those excuses and told people to stop downplaying Khamzat's victory. Usman explained that first and foremost, the whole short notice narrative needs to be put to rest. Yes, he stepped in late. Yes, he didn't have his ideal preparation. But at the end of the day, the record shows a loss for him and a win for Khamzat. There's no asterisk next to that result. Usman openly admitted that it was an L on his record. He didn't want to hide behind any excuses or fuel narratives that take away from Khamzat's achievement. He said he respected Khamzat for what he did inside the cage, and he felt no bitterness about the outcome. Usman also reminded fans of something many forget. Fighters are always battling challenges that the public never sees. Leading up to every fight, there are injuries, weight cuts, personal struggles, and countless obstacles that remain behind the curtain. He pointed out that Khamzat had his own struggles in the build-up as well. It wasn't just him dealing with adversity. Both men came in under circumstances that weren't perfect, and once the cage door closed, the fight played out the way it did. Khamzat got the victory, and Usman said it's as simple as that. In his words, give Khamzat the credit he deserves and move on. He also touched on the classic saying that styles make fights. Usman's style is different from the fighters Khamzat has faced in the past, and Khamzat's style is different from his previous opponents as well. But none of that changes the bottom line. Usman said Khamzat did exactly what he needed to do in that moment. He capitalized on the opportunities he created and walked away with the win. To close his thoughts, Usman doubled down. He said people need to stop trying to find excuses, stop trying to rewrite the story, and stop downplaying the outcome. The fight happened, Khamzat proved himself, and that night belonged to him. Usman finished by saying, "Once again, give him his credit." This kind of honesty from Mun shows the level of respect between fighters at the top of the sport. He didn't try to protect his ego or spin the narrative. Instead, he acknowledged reality. Khamzat came in, did his job, and earned the victory, and that's something Usman wants fans to recognize as well. And finally, Reinier has officially thrown his name into the mix as a potential challenger for Khamzat's next title defense at UFC 31 in Abu Dhabi. Coming off Khamzat's dominant win over Dricus du Plessis at UFC 319, the landscape in the middleweight division has shifted dramatically. Khamzat took virtually no damage in that fight, which means he's in prime condition for a quick turnaround. With UFC 32 only weeks away, the promotion is clearly looking for a big-name opponent to headline in Abu Dhabi. Normally, the next in line might come from the Imavov vs. Borrello matchup scheduled for September, but the timing doesn't work out. That fight will be too close to UFC 3021 for the winner to make the turnaround, so the UFC needs someone ready right now, and that's where Reinier steps in. The number 5 ranked contender wasted absolutely no time. Just hours after UFC 319 wrapped up, he publicly said, "Send me the contract." The 34-year-old Dutch Knight is currently undefeated in the UFC at 4-0, with 3 of those wins coming by finish. His most recent outing was particularly impressive. He beat former middleweight champion Robert Whittaker on ABC, showing that he can hang with and defeat the very best in the division. The Ritter's confidence is sky high. After UFC 319, he doubled down on his call-out of Khamzat, saying, "I already faced the best American wrestler, Bo Nickel, and I destroyed him. Now I want to see how I do against the best Caucasus area wrestler." That statement isn't just trash talk, it's a challenge rooted in Ritter's own competitive spirit. He wants to measure himself against Khamzat, the man many are already calling the most dominant force in the division. With Khamzat fresh, hungry and ready, Abu Dhabi looming, and the middleweight title picture in flux, this matchup suddenly looks very realistic. The only question left, will the UFC pull the trigger and book Khamzat vs. Reinier in Abu Dhabi?